Hi, my name is Kerry Critchlow from RCR Recording Studios, and today we're going to be talking about the harmonic minor scale. And this is where things really start to get a little bit complicated when it comes to music theory. If it hasn't seemed complicated already, this is where it goes up a notch, and it gets more complicated from here. So bear with me. There's things here that are going to be weird, and you might not always find a practical use application for everything we're going to go over here, but there are times when this will come in handy for you to know and understand kind of what's going on and how you can kind of go about utilizing this in your own productions. But this is where, it's, like I said, it's going to get a little bit more rare and things are going to get a little bit more complicated. So we're going over the harmonic minor scale formula and the harmonic minor. And this is the formula for the scale. It is whole, half, whole, half, three halves, and then a half. So it's like a whole and a half, or one and a half, if you will, with this 3H. So like you can think of this as a one and a half. Instead of just a whole step or a half step, it's like combining a whole step and a half step in 1 degree. So we're kind of extending the distance between the 6 and the 7, and we're shortening the distance between the 7 and the 8, or back to the 1, if you will. This is also going to introduce some more complicated chords, some of which we have not really gone over yet. But the concepts are there when we look at our triads and our extensions. This is where some of that kind of stuff is going to come into play a little bit. Previously, we've only kind of just touched a little bit on some of this stuff. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. We're really going to be kind of getting into it, because with harmonic scale, what you're going to notice is that this is in A, so A minor. When it comes to the three different scales from the three different minor scales, you have your natural minor, which we covered last week, and this is what that looks like. It's really similar to the major scale, right? We also have the harmonic scale, and we'll touch, which is what we're going over today, and then we will get into the melodic minor scale in the future as well, and then we'll start diving into the different modes, which, will add a whole other layer of complexity to things. But when it comes to the three minor scales, every song is either, we would say it's just a minor key, right? You wouldn't call this an A harmonic key. You would, or A minor like A minor harmonic, you would just say it's in the key of A minor, and we're utilizing the harmonic minor scale. And with that scale comes different chords, and these are all the chords. If you're in the A harmonic scale, these are the notes that are in that scale. So an A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, and A for the being in the A minor key, and then we have the G sharp here, which is where we get that 3.5 step, right? So instead of going from F half step to F sharp, have another half step or a whole step from F to G, we're going and adding that extra half step, so 1.5 whole steps to get to this G sharp, and then a half step to the A. So that's where this kind of formula comes in. But these are the notes that are played in the A harmonic scale, and these are the chords and their extensions that you can use this scale on top of, okay? And it's going to change things up a little bit, right? So the A minor from the A natural is still the same, the B diminished is still the same, but now we have a C augmented. And if we come down here, we know that an augmented chord is a sharp 5, so it's a 1 major third, and then a sharp 5. And so this becomes a C augmented. D minor stays the same. This E in a natural minor scale would be an E minor, but now, because it's in the harmonic, using the harmonic scale, this actually becomes a major chord because of this G sharp. Then F is the same as normal, and then this G, instead of being a a G major or dominant 7 really in the natural scale. This actually becomes a G sharp diminished in our harmonic scale, and then back to our A minor, and then some extensions. And these are going to add a lot of different flavors to the chords we're looking at. So I guess let's start with kind of playing you what the different scales will sound like. So we'll bring up a piano here. And we'll go through each of the scales that we've kind of covered so far. So we'll start with the major scale, and then we'll do the natural minor scale, and then we'll play the harmonic scale. And then from there, we're going to kind of just focus on the harmonic side of things, although we will be making some comparisons. So if we start with our C major, and the reason this is C major is because, as we kind of discussed last week, C major, when we're looking at our whole major scale formula, and I probably should have put this into C instead of the B flat that it's right now, but a C major is going to be the same thing, is the same key signature as an A minor. They're relative to each other, right? They relate to each other. And so A minor and C are going to be very similar. They just start on different notes. The C major scale will start on a C. The A minor scale uses all the same notes that are in a C major scale, except that it starts on an A minor. And that's the natural minor. So we're going to start with the C major chord. And this is something we should all be familiar with by now. Our C major scale, right? We should all be familiar with C major scale if you've been following along with the series so far. Then we've got an A minor, a natural minor scale. And that sounds like this. All right, a little sadder, a little bit more on the, I guess, negative side of emotions. Not negative as in bad, but negative as in not positive, I guess. And then our A melodic, or our A harmonic scale is going to be very similar to the natural minor scale, with a small exception. We're jumping from this F, and like I said, we're going 3 half steps up to this G sharp, or a whole plus a half. And then, so like, as you can see, these are nearly identical to each other until we get to this G for the natural minor, and that G for our harmonic minor becomes a G sharp. Okay, and that's what and this is what that will sound like. All right, and so we're going to play through all of these again, starting with the major scale in C, the A, and you know what? Actually, just for fun, instead of using C, I'm actually going to put this into an A major. All right, so this should, I think, be an A major scale. Yeah, okay. So this is an A major scale. Now we're using different, because it's A major and not now this is going to be different in full kind, right? So both of these scales will start on A, and then we have our 2, which is B, but the minor chord has a flat third, major scale has a major third, and then it kind of gets a little bit different from there, right? And so each of these scales, even though they start on A, all kind of have a different flavor to them, and they're utilizing different notes, right? And A major and A minor, those would be called parallel keys, if you will. So instead of being relative major and minor, this is parallel major and minor. Parallel meaning that they both start with the same note letter, but one is a major and one is a minor. They are going to have different notes in the key, and so that's something to be aware of. A major and A minor are going to have different notes in their scales. And the same thing with the natural minor, which is this A minor scale, and the harmonic minor in A. So they all are scales in A, but we have an A major, an A natural minor, and an A harmonic minor. That has a happier sound. That has a bit of a sadder sound. And this has a bit of a sadder sound, but also a little bit of interest, I guess, with that G sharp in it. And so while all of these scales are similar to each other, they're also quite different from each other. And they're built on different scale formulas. So our major, you can see, has whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Our natural minor has whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. And our harmonic has whole, half, whole, whole, half, 1.5 steps, if you will, and then a half a step. And each of them are going to have different sort of notes. And real quickly, I guess I can put this just so that we can see what's going on. Okay, and then we have an A, a B, that should be a C sharp, D, E, that should be an F sharp, and then a G sharp. Oop. I believe. Yeah. So C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp are the three sharps in A. And then, of course, the chords then would be A, B minor, C sharp minor, D, E, F sharp minor, and then a G sharp diminished. And then we're back to our A. So this is what an A major would look like. So this is the parallel to the A minor. Last week we kind of went over the relative major and minor. This week we're going over parallel. And you can see that there are some similarities between all three of these, but they're very different at the same time. And so when we're going through that, we can kind of get that scale. And then each of these scales is going to be the same going up and down. It's really the melodic minor that is going to be different going up than coming down, or ascending versus descending. And we'll cover that when we get to the melodic minor, but just something to be aware of for the future. With this is going to come different chords as well, because we're building on a different scale. The chords associated with that scale are going to be different as well. So unlike with our major scale, we have an A, a B minor, a C sharp minor, a D, an E, an F sharp minor, a G sharp diminished, and an A. With our natural minor, we have an A minor, a B diminished, a C, a D minor, an E minor, an F, a G, and an A minor. These are also all the same chords and notes for a C major. With our harmonic minor scale, we have an A minor, a B diminished, a C augmented, a D minor, an E major, an F, a G sharp diminished, and an A minor. And if we look down here at our triads and our sevenths, and we'll get into this here shortly, we have an augmented is a 1, a major third, and a sharp 5. A diminished is a flat 3 and a flat 5. And so we can assume here that the C has a sharp 5 and or the C augmented has a sharp 5 in it, and that this B diminished and this G sharp diminished have a flat 3 and a flat 5. The flat 3 makes it minor. The flat 5 kind of gives it the diminished flavor, if you will. And so if we were to go through and build out those chords, the basic triads, it would look something like this, and we'll just do half notes for now. So our basic A minor, which is an A, a C, and an E, and you can get that by 1, 3, 5, and we can derive all of our basic triad notes here by doing the same thing. If we call this B diminished our 1. Oh, interesting. That's a little better. Okay, so we'll call this our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for our basic triad, we just need to do a 1, a 3, and a 5. And so we know it's a B, a D, and an F, and that will give us our B diminished chord. All right. For our C augmented, if we start here on our C and call that the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We know that a C augmented is going to be a C, an E, and a G sharp. Okay, and that's how we can figure out what notes belong in each of these chords. And so we have our basic A minor, then we have our B diminished. We have our C augmented. We have a D minor. An E major. We have an F. And then we have a G sharp diminished. And then we'd be back to our A minor. All right, and you can think of this as the harmonies for the A minor scale. So if we look here, this bottom note A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, and then back to A. This is our harmonic scale, our root notes, right? This is A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. It's basically our scale here, and then we can use our triad formula, our 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, etc., all the way down to figure out what the harmonies on top of this scale would be, and that will give us our basic triads. And this is what that would sound like. Okay. Now, it may not seem quite as natural or musical, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's going to have a different flavor than what we get from a standard A minor triad. So, like, let's move this over, and we'll just start over here, and we'll do an A major. C sharp. Oop. Yep. And I forgot to put that into major. So this should, in theory, be an A major scale. Oh, this should be a B minor, not diminished. My bad. Okay, and so this is our major, triad here, or major scale triad based on the A major scale. And this is our A minor melodic. And just two different flavors. Everything's a little bit, I don't know if wonky is the right word, but you're getting kind of the idea here, how you can sort of build this out. And these are the chords that you can use for each scale, right? These are so if you were to play the A major scale over these notes, or over these chords rather, in basically any kind of order you wanted to, you could come up with a melody that sounds good over this, right? So these are all the chords you can use for the A major scale. These are all the chords you can use for the A melodic scale. And it will sound good, more or less, if you're playing the A melodic scale over any of these chords. Now, things get even more complicated when we look at the chord extensions, or the sevenths, when it comes to this harmonic, harmonic minor scale, right? So the chord extensions are generally where these sevenths are going to come from, right? And so if we're looking at A minor, we want to find out the seventh. We have 1, 3, 5, 7. G sharp is going to be our 7. But that's going to take this A minor and it's going to put a major seventh on top of it. And so the chord extension for this A minor in a melodic or in a harmonic minor scale is actually going to be a major 7. So we would actually call this an A minor major 7. And this is what that would sound like. Got kind of an odd sound to it, right? Let's give this a little bit more space to breathe. And then we can do the same thing with each of these chords. So if we draw this out, and then we have the seventh extension for our B diminished, which is going to be an A. And then the same thing here, if we were to look at our E major, this is going to be a, or not E, a C. So this is a C augmented 7th, or a major 7 sharp 5. So this is a C major 7, but with a sharp 5. So this G is being, a C major would be a C, E, G, and then the major 7 would be the B. Well, in this case, we're sharpening the 5th, which is this G, so we're making it a G sharp. And you can hear all of these chords are like a little odd compared to, say, like your standard major sevenths or minor sevenths, right? Because we're adding some augments and some diminish and minor majors and things like that. All right, and you can kind of see how this whole harmonic minor scale is a little bit odd, right? Now we're on our D. And this is just a standard minor 7. Right, so nothing too crazy going on there. It's just our standard minor 7. When we add in the C to our D minor chord. Now we're on our E, and this is our going to become a dominant 7. When we add in our 7th extension. All right, so that's a little bit more normal, right? Then we come to our F major. So like these 3 chords here are a little bit more what you might call normal chords, for lack of a better word. I don't know if normal is the right word, but you have a minor 7, a dominant 7, and a major 7. Which, you know, if you've been watching this series or following this series, you should at least be somewhat familiar with the concept of those chords. Then we have our G sharp diminished, but we're going to make it a, add in the 7th here as well, which is a flat 5 and a flat 7, which I believe would make this an F. And then we're back to our A minor major. So we add a G sharp in there. And here is what our extensions would sound like. So this is just an octave up from here. And so, yeah, these are all of the chords that you can play on top of the this scale, right? Now, you could choose some chord progressions here that would make this harmonic scale work. I don't know. So like, you know, before we talk about, you know, we doing a 1, a 3, and a 5, for instance. So an A minor, a C to an E. Or if we're in the key of A major, be an A, a C sharp minor, and an E major. And if we're in a natural minor, it would be an A minor, a C, and an E minor. In a harmonic, it would be an A minor, a C augmented, and an E major. So maybe we can try showing you what that sort of thing can sound like as well. So we'll do an A minor to a C. To an E major. Well, I guess this would be a minor. Okay, so this would be a 1, 3, 5 chord progression, and we're in the natural minor. So we're doing a 1, a 3, and a 5. A minor, C, E minor, in a natural, in an A minor. Now the same 1, 3, 5 in, excuse me, in A major would be an A, a C sharp minor, and an E. So we would make this an A major we would make this a C sharp minor, and we would make this E major. Okay, so it's still the 1-3-5, it's just in a different key. And if we were to take this in the harmonic minor, we have an A minor, we have a C augmented, which means that that C, E, and G sharp, and then we would have the E major again. And then we can, of course, add some extensions on there. And if we were playing this A minor melody over that, okay? And so these are just some of I'm kind of randomly putting some notes in there, ascending, descending, etc. But you know, these are all the notes that belong in the A melodic minor, or a harmonic. I'm sorry, I keep saying the wrong thing. A harmonic scale, right? All right, and then we can take off these extensions if you want. You don't have to have them in there. You can just use basic triads, but you can see how it has just a completely different sort of vibe and flavor to a normal, regular, everyday kind of scale. Now, you can also use the harmonic and natural minor scales somewhat, how to put this? So like, I'm not going to say interchangeably, but if you're in, say, if you want to use just standard A minor chords or A natural minor chords here, right? You can see that there are some times where the harmonic minor will not be appropriate, but other times it will be. So, for instance, if you're playing this A minor, C, E minor, there's not really a lot of, none of these chords include a G sharp in them, right? But if you were to say, substitute this E minor for an E major, all of a sudden now you can add in the G sharp into this scale as a melodic note, and it will work, right? So you can do things like substitutions, and a substitution is basically just taking any major or minor from any given key and sort of flipping it. So if you're in the key of A minor, you can make any of these the opposite of what they are. So this A minor would become an A major, this C would become a C minor, this D minor would become a D major, E minor, E major. You can do substitutions on things, and that will allow you to use different modes or different notes from different scales that you can apply. If we're in our harmonic thing, so like if you wanted to, you could just say, if you are playing a song and you happen to have a any chord that has a G sharp minor in it, or any chord that doesn't have a G natural in it, you could probably get away to a degree with using this harmonic major scale, that harmonic minor scale. You don't have to just use the triads that are in the scale to use this, the triads that are in this mode in order to use these notes from it. You just want to be careful that because this harmonic minor scale has this G sharp, that if you're going to be using this scale, that you are not playing this G sharp over anything that would contain a G natural, for instance, we'll say, right? So if we were to make this C here a C major instead of a C augmented, and this E minor and this E major and E minor, all of a sudden now these notes are going to clash quite a bit with these chords. Now, it clashes a little bit less with the C minor, and that just might have to do with the fact that there's not as many, there's only like this G sharp here at the very tail end. And so you can kind of get away with that a little bit to a degree. And so you can use these melodic minor or harmonic minor notes over these things. You just want to be careful. Like, for instance, you wouldn't want this here to be your G sharp, I think. Right, over a G sharp. Or over the G, a G sharp and a G sharp, because you're going to have kind of clashing notes. That sounds a little bit better, right? Because now we don't have those two, the G natural and the G sharp kind of clashing together. So you can play around with it. But the idea is the same with kind of most of these things, is here are the notes that you can play over these chords. Same with the natural minor. Here are the notes you can play over these chords. And here are the notes you can play over these chords. Things can get a little complicated. For instance, you might actually be able to, how to put this? You know, we wouldn't have the same thing. But, so yeah, there are times where you can use these notes over chords that are not these as well. You just have to make sure that you're in the right, kind of, you know what you're doing with them. And there's times with that. We'll get into that. But like I said, the major takeaways here are that you can use this scale over these chords. You can, even with this, like this B diminished, if you wanted, you could just make this a regular B minor, I'm relatively certain, and still be okay to use this scale over it. Or maybe not. No, because that would make it an F sharp. Never mind. Forget I just said that. I'm trying to be more clever than I really should be trying to be. But yeah. So just here are, here's the formula. Here are the extensions. Be aware that this is where like things start to get a little odd. And there might be use cases or times you want to use this. You can switch between a melodic minor, or I mean, sorry, a harmonic minor and a natural minor scale if you so choose. For instance, sometimes you can play this C augmented, and sometimes you can just play a regular C major, depending on what your melody is doing, right? So while they're not necessarily interchangeable, there are times where it might actually make more sense to play a natural minor over or using natural minor chords, and times where you can switch between the natural minor and the melodic minor with your melodies. You just want to make sure that they're supported with the chords or the right harmonies, if you will. And hopefully this is all making sense. I know this is where it's, things get pretty complicated, but hopefully you have a better understanding of the melodic minor, how you can kind of use it and apply it to your songwriting. And the more you kind of work with the scale and the chords, the more you'll kind of get a better feel for when to use the harmonic minor and when to maybe not. There are times where, like I said, instead of using this augmented chord or like this major minor, you can just use a regular A minor 7 and play the natural minor scale over it. But then once you've maybe you play the A major, the A minor 7, and then you have an E major in there somewhere, you can switch to adding a G sharp in your melody to add that harmonic minor feel, and then go back to a more natural minor feel, right? So there are times when you can sort of switch between the two scales and make it work within your song. But this G sharp is just kind of giving you an extra added flavor for your music. All right, and so you can kind of just use that melody, and then we can maybe even like, actually, first of all, let's bring this down a little bit because it's a little bit up there in the register. And maybe try, instead of starting on that A minor, maybe we start on a like an F major. And our F is the 6. And then maybe go to A minor here. And we'll go back to our original melody here. Right. And so we can use some more basic triads. We have an F, we have an A minor, we have an E major, and then a D minor. And so a little bit more basic chords, but we can still use this harmonic minor scale over those chords, right? And so right. So you can use different chords over the same melody. It's just a matter of like making sure that the notes that you're using in each aren't clashing too much. But you can make it a little bit more basic and still use these kind of fun scales, right? But like I said, this is where things get more complicated than it has been in the past, and it's only going to get a little more complicated from here. We're going to get into the melodic minor next week, and we'll cover modes after that. And there's modes are going to be a fun little time. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully you kind of understand the scale the difference between a harmonic minor and a natural minor, and even just like between majors. You're kind of getting a fuller understanding of how you can use these scales and when to apply them, and what chords and harmonies and things like that you can use with them, and kind of open up your musical vocabulary a little bit more, in order to produce some more variety of music, or different sounds with your music. So we're going to leave it there. And like I said, next week we're going to get into the melodic minor, and that's going to be a fun time as well. So with that, I hope you have yourselves a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye bye.